Once in a while, a little voice will pop in my head and say, Dave, are you sure you aren't overblowing any of the big issues that you talk about? Maybe the threat to free speech really isn't so bad. Maybe the assault on open discourse on college campuses isn't all that terrible. Maybe most of the mainstream media isn't simply pandering for clicks and views. Then, and it never fails, some current event takes place reminding me that the issues that we're talking about related to free speech are not only the most important issues of the day, but perhaps we're actually underestimating the severity of them. Without an absolute protection of free speech first, we can't have debates around any of the other issues that might be important to you right now. Care about Betsy DeVos's comments on Title IX? Care about Trump's decision on DACA or global warming as it relates to the recent spate of hurricanes? Your freedom of speech and of inquiry is what guarantees that we can have discussions around those issues and everything else. Tomorrow, former Rubin Report guest and a friend of mine, Ben Shapiro, will be speaking at UC Berkeley. The internet has been lit about the preemptive protests, the counter-protests, the safe spaces, and the trigger warnings for this event even before the event has actually happened. Sadly, in and of itself, none of this impending and hyped-up chaos is new, so I wasn't planning on addressing it before Ben even had the chance to speak. Then I saw a tweet from the Los Angeles Times, and I felt I needed to discuss it with you. The tweet reads, quote, "Berkeley braces for right-wing talk show host Ben Shapiro visit," end quote. Now, this headline doesn't seem too bad on face value. Actually, it reads very similarly to how much of the mainstream news is published these days. If you're looking for it, though, and I know many of you are, the headline is actually a loaded combination of subtle bias and outright fake news. Berkeley braces is an interesting choice of words because usually in headlines we brace ourselves for a hurricane or another natural disaster. The attempt here, of course, is to compare Shapiro's words with the same emotional weight as a natural disaster which can actually end lives. In a time right after two major storms, Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Irma, hit the United States, this phrasing is particularly useful as we are all subconsciously associating the word brace with death and destruction. If you think I'm overstating the word brace with hurricanes, just do a Google News search for braces for Harvey or braces for Irma and see what pops up. Now the Los Angeles Times reader knows that something so horrible is coming that UC Berkeley must brace for it as it would for a deadly hurricane. Next, they use the pejorative right wing to opine on Ben's talk show and his views. Of course, there's no doubt that as a conservative, Ben's political views are on the right. But there's something else when they say right wing. Virtually every time the mainstream media uses the phrase right wing, it's to paint someone as either scary, evil, or as a racist. In and of itself, being right wing isn't bad, it's just a political view, one which you may or may not agree with. But here we now have students bracing for this right-wing speaker. Sounds scary, doesn't it? Why does the mainstream media never label anyone or anything left-wing when they want to scare you? Has Antifa been labeled left-wing by the LA Times or CNN? I searched latimes.com for those words together, and unsurprisingly, it has not. While right-wing is a dog whistle for bad, and left-wing is just left out altogether when it doesn't fit the correct narrative, you really have a problem. Did you see a headline in the LA Times or CNN that read, "City University of New York braces for left-wing activist Linda Sarsour"? Of course you didn't, and I would argue that Linda Sarsour's ideas are far more dangerous than anything that Ben Shapiro talks about. If you think I'm being a bit melodramatic here, consider this. As long as the LA Times is using colorful language with their headlines, why didn't they add a fun adjective before UC Berkeley? I mean, Berkeley was once the home for free speech in America, and it is now a cesspool of left-wing, see I can do it too, hate. Why not say former school of academic freedom Berkeley braces for right-wing talk show host Ben Shapiro? Or intolerant of other ideas Berkeley braces for right-wing talk show host Ben Shapiro? Or even simply, and most honestly and directly, if we're being fair to both sides, left-wing Berkeley braces for right-wing talk show host Ben Shapiro. Certainly that would be true at least. but their omission of one label while prescribing another one tells you all you need to know. This headline, before Ben has even spoken, tells you a story all right, but it isn't the one that the LA Times intended. The headline tells you the story of the double standard with which mainstream conservatives have to deal with, fueled by a media that inflames the situation when it comes to anyone on the right, but largely ignores it when it comes to anyone on the left. This tricky use of words and selective writing is largely what people are talking about when they talk about fake news. The media should be giving us facts straight up, not editorializing through headlines that confuse and conflate what's actually happening on the ground. If you'd like to know more on how the media confuses us with headlines like this, check out my discussion with Eric Weinstein on the Russell conjugation, and we'll link to that video right down below. Ben is going to speak at UC Berkeley, and he is going to say some things that'll trigger some people, not because he's attacking individual people or because the things that he's saying are inherently offensive, but more so because he's challenging the social justice warrior ideology that has ransacked clear thinking on the college campus in America. If you don't like what he says, write a paper about it, invite a counter speaker, or non-violently protest in a way which allows the people who do want to hear him have a chance to exercise their right to free speech just as much as you want to exercise yours. Headlines like this subtly excuse and actually help instigate violence toward anyone who dares step out of groupthink. I guarantee that the ideas that Ben talks about tomorrow are in no way something you have to brace for, and even less something that you have to act violently towards. Defending free speech as a college student now will help ensure that it will be defended when you grow out of the groupthink as an adult. So instead of silencing speakers on campus, perhaps do what you're supposed to do in college instead. Listen to someone who thinks differently than you do. This way you will learn how to think, and instead of having to brace yourself for bad ideas, you can arm yourself with good ones. Joining me today is co-host of The Five, host of the Greg Gutfeld Show on Fox News, and more importantly, a survivor of the undergraduate program at UC Berkeley. Greg Gutfeld, finally, welcome to the Rubin Report.
Thank you for having me kind of there, even though I'm here, but still, I still feel close to you.
I feel that you are truly the hardest working man in showbiz because we tried to coordinate this for like 6 months and finally just getting our schedules lined up, but really more your schedule because you're doing 87 shows over there for Fox. Finally, we just conceded and we said we'll do this over Skype.
Yeah, and then I actually bought a ticket to fly to do your show, and you're not there. So I'm just going to sit at a hotel. I'm going to sit at the Sunset Marquis by the pool. I don't care how cold it is, and I'm just going to get drunk.
You know what? I had a choice, doing Harvard or talking to Gutfeld. And
yes, I see.
Well, first, before we do anything else, I'm very excited because it appears that you're in some sort of padded cell over there, which I assume is where they keep the hosts during the day, right?
This is where I sleep until the show's ready. Yeah, it's a I don't know what this is. It's a very tiny, depressing room, and it's very humid. But this is where we do podcasts and any kind of special Skypey stuff. That's how high tech we are here. I do like the artwork behind you, though.
Oh, thank you. I have a team of people that keep bright colors behind me so that in the winter this paleness doesn't, supersede anything else. So I mentioned, so you're a busy guy. I mean, you're doing 1,000 shows over there. Even when you've been letting me, I'll use the word letting, come on your show once a month or so, which I absolutely love. And what you're doing is a great blend of politics and comedy, which I think we need more now than ever. But even to afterwards, I'll be like, oh, you want to get dinner? You want to hang out? And you're like, oh, I got to tape 87 other things. I got the 5 now and 4 here, and I got 4. And then you're like, you want to meet at 6:30 in the morning? I can meet you on the corner for. I mean, how is it keeping up with that kind of production schedule? People see it on TV and they don't realize like it's work. It really is.
But to be fair, I still meet up with you. Like we have met up, and I still am able to after doing everything, meet you at a hotel bar and get slightly inebriated. So I always put that as a priority. It's I think, look, I cheat a lot, which I learned from magazines. I repurpose a lot of material. I'll be honest. Like if I gotta do this show and then I got to do this show, I look at what my notes and I go, nah, I could probably tweak it a little bit. Why reinvent the wheel? If you're going to be doing North Korea on the 5, and they're doing North Korea on the GG show, just use the same talking points. Just twist them up a little around. If you're going to use a metaphor where you're going to compare him to a spoiled brat, then you could compare him to a crazy uncle. Like, just keep changing the analogies and hope that people don't notice that you're a hack.
But do you ever feel like you're sort of like stealing from yourself? Sometimes I'll tweet something that I said in stand-up 10 years ago, and I'm like, wait a minute, I just stole that from old Dave.
That's why I try to alleviate that self-loathing by just slightly tweaking it. And sometimes, what happens is you end up finding something new. But I'll be saying something and I'll go, I swear to God, I said that a week ago. And that's the problem, too, with working a lot, doing 2 or 3 things a day, is that you find yourself repeating and you ask yourself, did I say this already? Oh, God, I hope I didn't say this before. And then I realized that I might have said it 2 years ago about the same story. Yeah. It's creepy. But, people are like you and me. They don't remember either. Like, if I don't remember what I've said, then they can't remember what I've said.
Oh, Greg, you underestimate the internet. They remember everything. So it's really interesting to me because you're doing at least two things over on Fox. So your 2 main gigs, though, are the 5, and this is a daily panel show. Everyone's seen it. It's crushing it in the ratings. You were on the 5 right from the beginning, right?
Yep, exactly. When it was at 5 o'clock. And you'll have a scoop. We're probably, I guess, moving back to 5 o'clock in a couple of weeks, I think.
Oh, is that right? I heard there's someone new coming to Fox. Is that public yet?
I saw it. It's like everything in life. I see it on blogs. Last night, I saw it on Media 8, and I think I saw it on CNN. And it was that we're going back to 5, and Laura Ingraham is coming to Fox, I believe, at 9 o'clock. No one has actually told me this at Fox. I've just read it. So I'm just assuming this is the case.
You just every day. Right. Well, you could either get an internal email or you could hear it from blogs. Which seems better to you?
Exactly. One day I'm going to find out that I'm fired on a blog.
Actually, I have a little. We just heard a little something, but I didn't want to tell you right now. Oh, wait, we got to pause for a second. It's your 50th birthday today.
No, it's my 53rd birthday. I'm 53. I know. I look like I'm 50. I look 3 years younger than people tell me that. They tell me that. Yeah, but this is an interesting fact. You know who just got born? Donald Trump had a grandson today. So his grandson, which is Eric, born today, will have the same birthday as mine. So I feel like I'm that much closer to the administration.
Wow. Well, you'll definitely have to leverage that for something.
Yes. But I noticed how shocked you are that I'm 53.
I thought 50 makes sense, but 53?
Yes.
53, that seems weird to me. So anyway, so you're doing the daily thing on the 5, and then, so I love doing your show because you're doing what I think is sort of how people should ingest politics with some humor, but also on your show, because it's a weekly show, you don't have to get slammed with the day-to-day stuff. So I'm curious for you, as someone that's doing both, do you like one more than the other? Do you find that sometimes you have to, just because of the nature of cable news and a daily gig, that you have to sometimes talk about things that maybe you don't particularly care about? Like, how do you balance all that for yourself?
That on the 5 that this is what you got to do. This is like, it's the end of, you're going through the garbage of the day. What happened? What I look at the Saturday show as, it's kind of like, everything is not so bad. Come on in, sit down. We're going to talk about how that week went, and we're going to focus on the stuff that we remember and the stuff that makes us nervous and the stuff that makes us laugh. But the bottom line is, unlike the daily news programs, we're not here to alarm or upset you. We're here to just say, you know what? It's not so bad. It's like, we're going to go through this North Korea stuff. We're going to go through Donald Trump stuff. We're going to go through this, and we're going to have a good time and have fun, and you're welcome to be here. And we want you to feel comfortable there. That means the guests should feel comfortable. The audience should feel comfortable. That's why I don't like it on the show. I don't like any conflict at all. I think maybe in 2 years or 2.5 years of doing the GG show, I don't think I've raised my voice at anybody. And I just feel like it should be the way daily conversation is, and you don't yell at people. I mean, maybe at a Thanksgiving dinner, you might yell at like the cousin that comes back from Harvard with a pierced nose to tell you how capitalism is evil, or it's your uncle who's got unusual views about the past, you know.
Right.
But most of the time, it should be the way you normally talk with people, and it should be fun. And never boring. It should be interesting. But sometimes that means not doing the stories that we do every day, but trying to see an overall, like, it's weird. There's always trends. The trends about speech. Like, I think every time you're on, we almost do something. There's campus speech or the efforts to silence speech or Antifa. So that's always going to be there. And then you always have a week of what Trump did. And that I like doing because it gives you a perspective that defies what all the other media is doing. The media, it's impossible for Trump to be what they say he is. You know, when they're in this hysterical mode, it's like there's no way he's that person. It's physically impossible for him to be Hitler and Bigfoot and you know and Charles Manson at once. It just is. So when I do that long turn back in the A block and look at all the things, all of a sudden you realize he's just kind of a funny 71-year-old guy. And you kind of like see that, like, he's not there. Even Sam Harris said something in this last podcast with this German philosopher, when the philosopher was comparing Trump to Hitler. And Sam Harris was like, yeah, but, you know, it really hasn't been that. I mean, there hasn't been a lot going on. And it was like, he was kind of dawning on him that maybe the hysteria is a little much. And that's the first time I've actually seen him do that. Yeah,
you know, you're hitting something really interesting there on the point of the weekly show as it relates directly to Trump, because if you look on Twitter, which I want to talk to you a bit about that too, and you look on just the general social media stuff, everyone's constantly reacting. The media doesn't give people a chance to react. They get outraged and then they tell you what they're outraged about because it's what you're supposed to be outraged about. But in a way, by you doing the weekly thing, you're actually removing the most toxic piece of the equation.
Yeah, it's the... I try to, the show for me is to settle down. Let's just settle down and block out all that crap, because it is crap. It's just I don't think, you know, I did this study in which I compared people on Twitter to people off Twitter, and the conclusion is people off Twitter are better. I don't care. Look, you know, if you're a good person if you're a good person right now in real life, you're not as good on Twitter. You'll never be as good as the person you are. And I know that with myself. I'll look at tweets I've sent, because normally after work, I'll have a couple of glasses of wine and I think I'm so damn clever. And then in the morning, I look at my shit and I go, you know, that's not who I am. Or that's not even, you know, it's better just to hold those thoughts and craft them for something else rather than to just spit them out and then wake up the next day and go, you know, that's petty. That's stupid. Oh, here's me trying to appear smart and funny when it's neither. And then when I see other people do it, like people that I like, I think less of them. Like I'll see a comedian that I really enjoy and I just go, God, he's such an asshole. Like it gets me so mad. So I realize that this thing makes people lesser people. And you know, I don't know. And so I try to avoid that.
I hear you.
I even hate the stories. I hate the stories that sometimes we might do it on the 5 or the GG show where you can do the Twitter created stories. So Dave Rubin says this, and it creates this reaction. And they start reading tweets as if that's a story. There's a billion tweets a day, and they find 6 tweets that say Dave Rubin should be fired. Dave Rubin should be fired. And it's like, oh boy, bad. You know, and it's just like, and that's the story. And then we all comment on that. Then that ends up on Mediaite, right? And then Mediaite gets tweeted, and then it creates this stupid thing that just keeps going around and around. I hate it, and I still get suckered into it like flypaper.
And this is why Dave Rubin is his own boss, because he's going to have to tweet something pretty damn stupid to fire himself. But that's actually a perfect segue for where I wanted to go, which was just a little bit about Fox, because you're basically the funny guy at Fox. I mean, you offer comic relief. I think Jesse Waters does it a little bit, but you're sort of the main guy. And the amount of what I would say at this point, it's sort of similar to the Trump thing, the amount of unhinged hatred towards Fox. Now, I can tell you just from my own experiences at Fox, I did O'Reilly's show way back when. It was, you know, we argued actually, but it was a totally pleasant experience. They let me say whatever I want. When I do your show, you 100%, there's, as far as I know, you've never edited a word I say. I did Tucker last week. It was live, so they let me say what I'm going to say. So this unhinged hatred of Fox, as someone that works there, that's also on the entertainment side of things, how do you deal with that, like with friends and family and everything else?
It's a great question because there's so many facets to it. Number one, if somebody hates Fox, they don't recognize me, so I can go wherever I want. I can go wherever nobody. But it's really funny because like the people that watch Fox really like you because they feel like they have a connection to you because they feel like, oh my God, there's somebody there that understands me. So the people who recognize you really like you. There are situations where there's this area where they recognize you and they don't know why, and it's because they were at their parents' house. And you were on the TV, and your dad or his dad was watching, and you're like, oh, what is he saying? I hate this guy. And they see me, and they get the best. It's when I got recognized at a bar in Newark. I was waiting I think I might have been waiting for my wife to fly in. I'm sitting at a bar. This guy is just staring at me. I've told this story before. It's my favorite story. He's just staring at me, and he's an older guy, and he's just holding a beer, and he's really looking at me, and I go, oh, God, here it comes. Here it comes. And so he comes over, and he just goes, I just want to tell you, I think you should be ashamed of yourself.
Of course,
you should be ashamed of where you work. And I'm just like all right. Because I don't say anything because it's not worth it. And then he goes, what TMZ... I realized he thought I was that guy, the guy with the Slurpee drink.
He thought you were Harvey Levin.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
And I was thinking, what a great opportunity to actually punch this guy and get Harvey Levin in trouble. But instead, I just started laughing, and I just kind of shrugged, and then we went our merry way. But let's use comparisons when my wife, when we go out and we're with her friends. A lot of her friends don't watch Fox. Some people do. So you get into these weird dynamics of politics, and they find out that you're a nice guy, and they find out that you're normal, and and then all of a sudden that changes the way they think, and then all of a sudden they are bumming cigarettes off you, and you ended up going to some other bar and all this crap, and then that whole thing, it's gone. But generally, I do sense like a little bit of this weird resistance, and then they find out that I'm sure a couple of times somebody's gone up to my wife when they find out who she's married to, because she works in fashion. They go, "You're married to him," but it doesn't happen very often. It happens enough that I remember it like once or twice.
Yeah,
but it's go ahead.
I don't know if you know this, but jumping back to Harvey Levin for a second, I believe he's getting like a limited run on Fox News now. Did you know about that?
Yeah, well, I saw that he does that thing is it about people's stuff? Like
yeah,
he interviews people about their stuff. Yeah, so it's gonna be even worse now. It's just gonna be, they're gonna just think I'm him. But I'm trying to think. There's on Fox. I mean, when you go on social networks, I'm already used to that stuff. I've been here for 10 years. Before there was the phrase fake news, there was the opposite, which was faux news. So it was always faux. FAUX is what they called Fox News. So I was always people would say you're a scum. You work for the Murdochs. That's all you get, all that stuff. So it's not an argument. So it doesn't bother me. Like if they're not coming at me with something where I was wrong, then I don't really care. What's going on in here? There are lights going on and up.
I think the Murdochs just sent you a message.
Yes, that's amazing. I'm not supposed to say the name.
Wow. Shut the lights off on Gutfeld. Jeez.
That was incredible. What timing. No, but if somebody comes at me and with information that proves that I'm wrong, I actually welcome it, but it makes me sad that I'm wrong. But anything else, like you're a horrible person, because that's not an argument. The one that I get a lot is I used to think you were funny until I saw you on Fox, or you're not funny.
Jesus.
Are you leaning against the switch? That's Gabby, I think you're leaning against the light switch. Oh my God. Oh, you're fired.
That was a beautiful metaphor for Fox. People think it's the evil Murdochs. It's Gabby leaning on the switch.
Gabby leaning against the light
switch.
Gabby, why I oughta. No, but Gabby's great. She's my assistant. She's from Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Anyway, nothing to do with what we're talking about. But, oh my God, what were we talking about? We were talking about Fox. I forgot.
Well, you were saying about you don't mind being corrected.
Oh yeah, but it's when they say, the one thing I was getting at is you're not funny. That happens when people, that's when people don't like what you've said. So it's like, instead of disagreeing with you, they go, well, you know, you're just not funny. It's like I've been blocked by comedians on Twitter, which I find odd. You know, it's like, it's just such a weird thing. And Sarah Silverman blocked me because I was like, people will send me her tweets about Fox. I can't read them. And I go, I can't read those. I'm blocked. Or Lena Dunham has blocked me, which I take as a badge of honor. But it's like, that's such a strange thing. It's like, I'm not a comedian. I just talk. It's just weird that comedians get so angry over stuff. And then they go, I can't deal with it. I got to block them.
But isn't that sort of exactly the symptom of what's going on in society at large? Like the fact that comics now are calling for books. You know, Sarah Silverman didn't want, wanted to boycott Simon & Schuster because of Milo's book. Now, you may hate Milo, but can you imagine George Carlin ever being like, we're going to ban books?
It's frightening. And it's like, I think we talked about it at the bar, something I kind of remember, that comedians in general aren't doing enough in this arena to mock this. You hear about comedians saying they're not doing college campuses anymore. I think even I don't know if it was Seinfeld or
it was Seinfeld.
It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. I don't need the trouble. You say one thing, you know, it's like, well, actually, you should be the one that says we got to stop this. But I know that he's made enough money. He doesn't need to do that. Yeah. But younger comedians should be over there going out and like saying, screw this. I know there's a First Amendment tour going on, but it's not comedians. It's Camille Paglia and oh geez, I hate bringing up stuff that I don't remember. But Camille Paglia is the headliner, and they're and they're just speaking, and it's basically a big FU to what's going on. Comedians should be doing that. They should be doing comedy roasts on campus. You know, like just like the Jeffrey Ross stuff. They should be doing that on campus on purpose. Make them as disgusting as possible.
Well, it's funny because the roast thing isn't exactly my old stand-up ground where I was doing stand-up in New York for 12 years, but I am doing the college thing now, and it's like by default I'm becoming funny again in a weird way because everyone else is so hysterical and these kids are just sitting there going, it can't be this bad, and there's fertile ground for comedy there.
It's interesting if you see. Like you'll see it on YouTube. There'll be a comedian on stage, and everybody's laughing, but he'll say one thing, and then somebody in the audience is upset. So now you have to worry about like the singular offensive thing. It's like it'd be like making a joke about herpes, and somebody getting up and going, how that's not funny. And then he gets up and now you know, okay, now we know who has herpes. But it's like as a comedian now, you're supposed to think that like, okay, I got to worry about every single person in there. There might be a cat lover. If you don't like cats and you say something about, I mean, it used to be people are supposed to park that stuff outside. When they get in the audience, all that shit's out there. I can take a joke. But now people are encouraged to bring their pain into a comedy club, and how dare you say this or that, you know?
But not only are they bringing their pain in, they're also bringing their phone. So it's like in the old days, okay, if you brought your pain in, well then you could heckle and okay, that's it. Now you can live stream your pain and get extra social justice points. All right, let's shift from there for a second. Yeah. So I mentioned up top that you were an undergrad at Berkeley. We've been talking a little bit about the college thing for a second. So what years were you at Berkeley? I can't do the math off the top of my head.
83 to 87. Yeah. So it was it was back in the glory days of New Wave. Yeah. That's why, by the way, that's why I went to Berkeley. I was either going to go to University of Santa Clara, which is a smaller private school in Palo Alto, or obviously Santa Clara, or Berkeley. But Berkeley had the best record stores, and I used to go every weekend from San Mateo, drive over the bridge, and go to Rasputin They had Rasputin Records, Tower Records, and there was a third one I can't remember. That's why I chose Berkeley, because I just like to buy records, and I was kind of liberal, but I didn't even know what politics really was. So it wasn't for. I didn't even know the history of Berkeley when I got there. I had no clue it was this radical bastion. Until I started taking classes, but I didn't even understand what I was being taught. Like I had a lot of deconstruction and a lot of deconstruction informed in all parts Like if you took a Bible class, it was deconstruct anything. But I didn't really know what it was. I just learned to ape it. If you figured out how to do it, you could get A's. That's what I did.
So you come in, and I sense, and from what I've read also, I did read your Wikipedia. You didn't care that much. You didn't care, and I assume it's on Wikipedia, it's true. You didn't care that much about politics specifically. Then you get there, you kind of realize you're being inundated with this stuff. When did you have that shift that sort of put you, I guess you consider yourself a libertarian now, right?
Yeah.
Is that if we're using labels?
Yeah, I would say this. Okay, when I was in high school, I considered myself like every high school kid. I was like a radical. I worked for the nuclear freeze, so I was political, but it was only for grades. So I was an opportunistic leftist. When I got to Berkeley, I saw the real ones, and I saw the groupthink that I'd never seen before. I'd never seen just one mass of people thinking the same way. And it was scary. They used to have marches about all sorts of stuff, and I'd be walking home from the library, and just people yelling at me, and I have no idea what's going on. That was like, I'm not like that. I'm not like this. I'm not political, but I'm like, what is this? And is this all there is? And then a friend of mine, or this guy Patrick, came home, and he had like 2 magazines with him. He had National Review and the American Spectator. And at the time, the American Spectator was this oversized broadsheet. And both of them had sections in them that were actually funny. P.J. O'Rourke wrote for American Spectator, and National Review had some genuinely funny. I mean, Buckley was funny. And they had these little sections of short news called This Week, which was in National Review. And then American Spectator just had like great writing throughout. Tom Wolfe, Joe Queenan, all this stuff. And I read, and it was like, I didn't know this stuff existed. I had no clue that this was, and I started subscribing to that. And then by my senior year, I applied for an internship at the American Spectator. And that would be kind of my quasi first journalism job, even though all I was a guy who fetched cigarettes for editors. And
it counts.
Yeah, it does count. It was a year of driving my boss around in his diesel Mercedes.
Yeah.
But so that's what happened.
So what do you think happened sort of to that sort of conservative or libertarian thinking that was making sense to you? It seems to me that probably a little bit after that, and maybe a little more towards the G.W. Bush portion of the 90s, where the Christian conservatives sort of really took a hold of the party, that it really probably changed at least what I would argue are probably like sensible libertarian things. Did you see a shift? Like, how long were you cool with what was going on before maybe you weren't, or maybe you were the whole time? I don't know.
You know what? I realized that the newer you are to politics, the more likely you are dedicated to a certain side, including libertarianism. Like when you meet a young libertarian, they're as annoying as a young leftist or a young right winger. Everybody's annoying if they put themselves in a box and they're shouting in the box. I think it had to do with like seeing, again, moralism. A certain kind of moralism, which was a mirror of the left-wing moralism, the right-wing moralism. They're both kind of the same thing. And I realized, so as I became, into the libertarian era, which was just wanting to be left alone and not understanding why people go to jail for stuff in which they're just trying to find pleasure in life, whether it's drugs or prostitution. These are things that, these are decisions that a human being can make on their own, and how you can be punished for these things. That made me more of a libertarian. However, people would argue I'm not a libertarian because I'm for a pretty strong national defense, and I'm for surveillance. And I think it's because I've been so focused on terror since 2001 that's I always tell myself I'm a libertarian with a lot of guns, or a libertarian with a nuke. I feel that you need to have national security in order to have freedom. That we always libertarians will put them as opposing things. That Benjamin Franklin quote: "If you sacrifice one for the other, you have neither." Yeah, I think they go hand in hand. They're siblings. That if you want freedom, you got to be able to fight for it. So they go together. Some people might say legitimately that I go too far. I have friends who say I go too far. The people that I work with go like, you are overstating the threats of terror. I always see terror, like terror is my global warming. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, people who are into global warming are like, the world's going to end. I'm like that. I really believe terror is all it's going to take is one guy with a dirty bomb. That's what I think about. And I read a lot on it, and it fills up my brain sometimes. Maybe I get a little too crazy.
Yeah, so I'm kind of with you on my belief, and as a classical liberal or a libertarian or whatever that space holds right now, my belief is that the strong military thing, I'm 100% for it, because I believe if you have a strong military, most likely you don't have to use it. It doesn't mean you should just use it to do whatever the hell you want all over the world and nation build and all that, but hopefully it causes some deterrence. The surveillance thing, I'm probably a little more center than you, but it's interesting that you're offering a little caveat there, saying maybe you are seeing it. I like that. Someone that's honestly saying my lens of this maybe could shift, or maybe is a little blurry or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be open to being wrong about a lot of things, because I know when I've been wrong. You know, I'm trying to think of an example.
Oh, Gutfeld, please. I have a list here. You're going to make me do this?
Yes, no.
Get me the list, guys.
But you know what if, you know, it's like, you know, let's say something like stop and frisk. I mean, stopping stop and frisk in New York, has it had a negative effect? I don't know if it has. I was for stop and frisk, but I don't know if you're seeing a negative impact. I think the murders are down. I don't know about if they probably confiscated less guns. I don't know if gun crime has gone up, but I'm pretty sure overall, maybe murder's gone down in New York. It's gone up in other parts of the country, but I think New York had stayed down. But
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about murder in New York, but I'm pretty sure crime overall in New York City is way up, isn't it? Is
it? I don't know. You know, see, I could be wrong about being wrong. Maybe I was right about stop and frisk.
Now I just aided and abetted your wrongness.
Yes,
you see what we've done
here?
I'm
never going to admit being wrong again. I think the murder rate is lower, but there's, you know, rape is up, and they're trying to. That's an interesting thing, because they're not sure if it's because of reporting more or what. But that's been a disturbing thing that's been happening. I hope I have that right. I think I have that statistic right. I should. You know,
I don't give too much cred to YouTube these days with everything that's going on demonetization and all that nonsense, but I know that my audience on YouTube is good enough that they are going to fact check the hell out of the two of us right there. And you know what? If someone can give me something real in the comments down below, we'll pin it up top, and then we'll make fun of Gutfeld for the rest of the month.
And I will come back and admit that I was wrong. But I always say I may be wrong, because I may be wrong. It's like, why do you have to be? I don't understand the desire to always be right. I mean, it feels good, but it's also good to learn something. Also, you can be better at being right if you let people help you. You know, I'm still open on the climate change stuff. I'm always interested in finding something else that can help my brain, because I am, you know, I'm in that world where I was against the climate accords, but that doesn't mean I don't think climate change is a hoax. You know, I think that it's too complex.
Yeah. So, wait, let's just dive into that real quick. So without going too deep on the science of it, is your feeling on that as a libertarian, you just don't think this is something the government can really handle, and yet you're acknowledging science as is? Yeah,
I think it's weird. It's like, what drives me crazy, whenever we do climate change on the 5, it'll be one segment. 6-minute segment. I end up reading for 4 hours, and it destroys my whole day, because what happens is that, talk about a rabbit hole. Yeah. So you'll have some really elegant work on how climate change is real, and then you go into the hurricane stuff, and they go, well, CO2 is rising, but the hurricanes aren't, and there's elegant work on that too. And then you read, and scientists are going like, we can't say for certain that these hurricanes are the cause of man-caused climate change, but it could be. And then so you end up there, and then you see like, oh, is there a pause? Well, you'll see this work saying there's a pause, and then there's work that says there's no pause. There's a slight increases, and those increases mean everything. And then the person I read all the time is Bjorn Lomborg. Have you ever read him?
I have.
He's like to me the most sensible. He's what you call a lukewarmer. You know, he's not a skeptic. He's not an apostle. He's a lukewarmer, and he talks about, like, you know, what realistically can you do And why he was a big critic of the climate, the Paris Accords, and to spend like $100 trillion over 100 years, and you're not going to see any effect is kills people. Is what his kind of what he was saying. If you took that money, he listed like 10 things you could eradicate completely, including starvation, with that money. But instead, we're going to just take all of that to try and move this thing a little bit, and not even sure if that's going to have an effect. So I think that's when you marry it to the economics in the context of what you could do better in this world, then it starts to make more sense. And I do think I think it was unfair in the groupthink world of climate change to ridicule and mock people who could smell that not everything is what it seems. Not the people that say, oh, it's a hoax. I'm just saying people like me that are going like, wait a second, I've been through this before. I've seen this growing up with the Ice Age. I've seen it when I worked in health magazines. The types of fads that people were 100% like nobody cared. Everybody was high carb when I was at Men's Health. Right. And you know, cut out your protein and all. And now you realize that no, you want to lose weight. You got to, you know, eat meat, even though I'm trying. I don't know. But what my point is, I kind of sense when everybody's saying the same thing that it's not really all that it seems, that people are saying the same thing in order to belong and to avoid being criticized. And it kind of builds on itself in the climate change debate. It builds, people go, well, if I'm going to be liked in Hollywood, I got to say this. If I'm going on the Bill Maher show, I got to say this. So it kind of builds its own mentality, and you start to think that it's not that simple. But if you say that, people are going to attack you. So you just go, I don't want to talk about it. That's what happens. People don't want to talk about it.
The point is, Gutfeld, whether you have the yolk in the egg or you only eat the white, you are going to drop dead one way or another. All right, so my last thought on the climate change thing is, you know that Al Gore, Mr. Climate Change, he did sell Current TV, which was his cable news network, to the government of Qatar, which is the world's biggest or second biggest oil exporter. So the point is, I think we're all a little kind of in the weeds on this one, fair to say?
I think so. He also, if he had been right about climate change, he couldn't have made a sequel because we would have been dead. So the only way he could make a sequel if he was wrong in the first movie.
Are you saying he's doing the producers? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Or I guess it's like the reverse producers in a weird way or something like that. All right, I think from climate change, a good segue is to news in general. So as a guy that works at Fox, you're in the cable news thing. I think the question I get more than anything else these days is, who do you trust? How do you figure out when you're going through the research on what you're going to talk about on the 5 or what you're going to cover on your show? How do you figure out what's actually legit?
Wow, that's interesting because I read the stuff and then I talk to people and I ask them what they think. We have people at Fox. We have something called the Brain Room. If I'm skeptical of a number, and they're good. This is like a group of people in a room that just spend all day fielding questions. That's why they're called the Brain Room. And if I have a problem with something, I'll go to them. But if I smell anything, I won't touch it. Like if there's a story that I just go, if something sounds too good, then it's not. It's just too perfect. And you always there's weird stories like where you find woman's child sent home for singing America the Beautiful while petting a kitten. Well, you know what I mean? It sounds like just such perfect red meat, and then you find out somebody makes a few phone calls and you find out it's not true. The kid punched some kid when it's suspended. A lot of these stories that sound like they would be perfect never pan out. So I think I'm just super skeptical of everything, and I'm careful. Probably the best thing to do is you let a story breathe for a couple of days. Never be the first one. Never jump on something because I regret every time I've ever jumped on a story because it's never been right. It's this has to have happened. And then you go, it's like, when you I hate to admit this, like falling for a hoax. I think I fell for something. There was a hoax on Twitter about a Burger King. Do you remember the Burger King tweets? The guy in Hong Kong, the Burger King tweets.
I don't.
And he was
what
writing
was that?
he was writing Burger King tweets, and in him he was going, "My life is horrible." And I thought this was, oh my God. And it turned out this guy had been hoaxing for like 6 months. I go, okay, he got me. So I always go like, okay, it just is too delicious a story. Wait 2 days. I won't do it on any show. That's the other benefit of doing a weekly show, is you get to kind of come in and see the mistakes that everybody else made and go, look what he did. He thought it was real. And like hoax, like hate crime hoaxes are a good example. Like if you just wait a couple of days, something happens, and it's just like, I knew it, you know?
Well, the one that always sticks with me is, remember the clock boy who got kicked out of school, and everyone was going on and on about this is based in racism and Islamophobia and all this stuff. But if you looked at what he brought into school, it looked like a bomb. I mean, it just did. And we live in a time when they say if you see something, say something. So if a little white girl had brought that thing in, or a little white boy, those are the people the left thinks are evil. So shouldn't they have called in on that? And then, of course, there was a ton of other shady things that happened after the story and all that.
President. What was he running for president of? I can't remember. Was it Afghanistan? I can't remember. But
and I think the family moved to Qatar and all that. But even that doesn't matter. But I just remember thinking during that thing that the media portrayed it in such one way that if I even had tweeted, well, just everything aside, I don't want this kid to be treated differently, but everything aside, if any kid of any color brings something that looks like a bomb, it didn't look like a clock, it looked like a bomb, to school, that would just be teachers doing their due diligence. But I didn't even want to touch it because I didn't want to deal with it.
And you know what? It was frustrating because President Obama touched it. Didn't he say like, I'm going to invite...
He could be his son or something.
Yeah. Or somebody was like, I'm going to invite... I think he was saying that... He said something, he'd invite him to the White House for something, and it was like, it just shows you that you can have these blinders on and not see, like, that there's a possibility that this is a hoax and that there's something going on. But no, if he's in the Islamophobia bubble where everybody has terrible intentions rather than they're just trying to be safe. They see something that looks like a bomb. That's not Islamophobia. But he says, this poor kid is being targeted because he's just doing a science project, and it's like, no, people were just worried. That's what they're supposed to do. It looks like a bomb. So his bubble prevented him from seeing that. I don't know.
How do you blend some of the, I've said to a couple of people when I do your show that one of the things that I like is because you're like doing the cable news thing and you get the online thing. Like this, for example, when you go up to your PR people or whoever coordinates your stuff, do they say to you, Gutfeld, you can't say this or don't touch this or anything even remotely close to that? Because I think that's what a lot of people think is happening at Fox and a lot of the other evil networks.
I think they're pretty free about it. No one has ever told me not to say anything. And they also understand the difference. However, when I swear on Twitter, I usually get I used to get a little grief. Like, do you really have to say that? And I go, look, I know I have my own theories on swearing that I don't understand. I don't understand the concept of swearing. Like, what does this word do? We're all don't swear in front of my children. Your kids are going to swear. So what you're trying to do is just put it off as long as possible. Don't swear in front of my kid. Because in 5 years your kid's going to be swearing anyway. So it's like everybody swears. It's just like pooping. In fact, it's just like pooping. It's therapeutic. You can't hold it in. If you keep holding it in, it's like if you couldn't swear, what would you do if you stubbed your toe? You would punch somebody. So the swearing keeps you from punching people, just like pooping. That was a terrible analogy, but you get my point.
There's always one moment in a show where I go, we got the promo clip for Twitter, and I feel it was looped around that pooping analogy.
It always ends up there. I apologize, but people always tell me too many poop jokes, and that wasn't a poop joke. But like that's an issue with me.
It was a poop
I don't know
metaphor.
Why. Yeah, it was a useful metaphor. Right?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? I
said it was a poop metaphor, not a useful metaphor. Poop.
But swearing, like I find it weird that we pretend that swearing doesn't exist. You know what I mean? It's just when you'll be on TV if I swear on TV, I will get fired or I'll get suspended. But all of us, when we go out into the green room or go somewhere else, we're just like, whatever. We're saying it's just such a weird thing to say. Well, we have to pretend like the world out there is a different world. And I get it. It's because you're in somebody's living room and you should respect their living room and be polite. But it's not, but I just don't see how swearing is rude. I don't understand it.
Yeah. But is that kind of one of the inherent problems of not necessarily cable news, but television news in general, that it's creating this fake thing? Like, I get what you're saying about the living room and trying to be respectful of people. And I don't curse that much. Every now and again, I drop the F-bomb if I think it's particularly appropriate. But then you have this sort of fake guarded thing coming through the television. Then people go online, they see this completely unfiltered thing. Now it could be filled with nonsense and lies and fake news and BS and all that, but they're going, it at least seems a little more real than the guy who can't curse.
But you know what the flip side of that is? When you look at somebody's description on Twitter, God-fearing grandparents of 3 lovely children, and they're writing, "Fuck you, burn in hell" on Twitter, and it's like, okay, you're a guy, like, it's so funny to see that, like, so that tells you that everybody swears. Yeah. It's like everybody swears. But anyway, it's funny to me because
I love that crew. I love that crew. The tolerance, peace, love in the Twitter handle. Fuck you, Rubin, you motherfucker.
It's amazing that they forget that they wrote that up there, and they're saying terrible things in their tweets. It's always really, I mean, a lot of people do it to remind you. Always, like, when somebody says something horrible to you, you remind them what's in their below their avatar. It's like, you do realize that you say that you're like a loving this and a loving that, and or I'll ask them if they're kids. If they write to me on Facebook, I always tell them, I'm going to put this on your Facebook page, and then they always apologize.
Gutfeld, I think we've learned something here, which is Twitter is destroying the country.
It is. Did I say this here or on break that I did a study? Yes, I think I did do that. that people on Twitter. Yeah,
that was here.
That was here. Jeez,
that was here, Gutfeld.
Did I tell you that this is what happens? Is I can't remember what I've said. This just happened. But no, people.
You know what? Not remembering what you said also has to do with Twitter. As someone that just took a month off, doing that short nonsense all the time, it's like it's short-circuiting all of our brains.
Yeah, it's so gross. It's like I don't feel good after it. I just don't feel good about myself or the world when I'm on there. It's there've been a lot of unfortunate events in the last month, and whether you have the hurricanes and you see all the, like, I think I said this on the 5. You see so many inspirational acts during the hurricane. You see, blacks carrying whites, whites carrying blacks, old ladies and young people and all this stuff. And then you go on Twitter and you realize, okay, what's real is what people see. Like, you can't, like, when you're talking to somebody, you treat them as a human being. On Twitter, you don't. So the contrast of how horrible people are on Twitter is precisely because they're not having the human contact. Like, a person could save another person's life, and those two people could hate each other on Twitter. It's because you have to have, for the sake of evolution, and you have to have eye contact and see people. Granted, we are animals of communication, so this is what we do, and it's not going to change. It's just that, will we get any better, or are we going to get worse? So that's what scares me.
On that note, let's shift away from talking about Twitter. How about that? I think
I'm so obsessed with it. Every day I say I'm getting off it, and I don't. So I'm a jerk. You know what?
We'll revisit this in a couple months and see where we're at.
I'm going to do what you did. I'm going to take a month off. But I don't know if I can. But I am. 2 weeks. I'll take 2 weeks.
Yeah. Do you ever feel, just putting aside social media, do you ever feel that exhaustion of the news? I got a lot of that. When I jumped back on, I got so many emails from people just saying, man, I wish I could do that even for 3 days. Or even when I was away, the amount of people that were staring at their phones, of course they're taking selfies and all that nonsense, but just I was on a beach in Mexico for a couple of days, and at one of the cafes they had CNN playing. I had to make sure not even to go in there. It's like, why would you want to be on a beach in Mexico and watching CNN?
It's freaky. It's like, you got to get it. Yeah, I always feel like it's so much, but then something else happens, and then you forget about what just happened. That's the weird thing, is that the cycle is so fast. It wasn't always like that. That was what was interesting about the hurricane, was that was the first story that we had to focus on for more than 2 days. It went on for like with the Houston hurricane. We got Harvey. We spent 8 days on that, and then we went right into Irma. That's the first time in a long time since probably the Trump, I guess the election, that we spent every day on one thing. We didn't cover anything else. Maybe that's healthy. That like it re-engineered my brain a little, where I had to concentrate. But I don't really watch TV when I get home. I I'll watch Bar Rescue. What do you call it when they're just over and over again? It's just they had them overlap. Yep. So I can't, I just sit there and go, I haven't seen this bar yet. And I just watch the marathon, and all of a sudden it's like 9 o'clock at night. And then I just watched like 12 episodes, and some of them I'd seen before.
If you, listen, if you think you're dealing with some filth in the news, I mean, that John Taffer guy, he's going to the back of those bars. There is some nasty, it would make you never want to go to a bar again. There is some nasty stuff.
He's like, what are you doing? I think he's going to die because his eyes, and you think they're going to get in a fight. And then all of a sudden, they hug and everything's good. And they always find dead bugs and there's always a rodent under a sofa. And I know that show backwards and forwards. It's the forwards. It's like, and then they turn around for the surprise. And I'm like, not that surprised. It's just another bar.
There's always a mouse in the refrigerator in the back. But actually, there's something interesting you're hitting on there, I think, a little bit. Like when a guy like him, he's doing, obviously, it's not news, it's a reality show. But the yelling, because in cable news, when you know some of these people, I don't need you to call out anybody at your network or even another network, but although feel free to if you'd like to. But how much of it for these guys, for a lot of these guys, do you think is theater versus actually knowing what they're talking about or caring what they're talking about? Because what I think is that a lot of people, the average person, doesn't realize how much actually is pure theater for ratings. At the end of the day, these networks, they need views, they need eyeballs, they need clicks. And if they're going to have a guy who's going to calmly explain an issue and say, you know what, climate change, I believe in science, but I think that maybe they're forcing something down, whatever it is.
Right.
That guy is always going to be rammed to the bottom of the pack by the guy who's going to scream.
And it might be a wrong assumption to think that a booker goes, get this guy, oh, he's great. And you go, why is he great? And he got in a huge, you should see him on this show. But I think it might be changing because I think the audience attitudes are changing. I don't think they like the yelling anymore. You don't have as many crossfire moments.
Yeah.
And when you do have, and I know from the 5, when there's a crossfire moment, the response, the audience doesn't like. The Mediaite will put it up there. Oh, so-and-so melts down, blah, blah. But the audience doesn't like it. They're like going, I had to turn it off. When you and Juan yell at each other, I have to turn it off. That's what they'll say. And I go and I remind myself, how did we get to the point where we were yelling? Funny thing is, when it happens on the 5, it is real. It's like when we're yelling, it's actually real. Some other shows it might not be. I think old school shows that were I think it's changed. It's funny that when you think about these assumptions of producers, they assume that John Taffer has to yell all the time.
Right.
Because that's drama. But I don't like, or else they have the weird sinister music. It's weird, it sounds like a door creaking, or it's or that they have to show transition from night to day. All the stuff that they use, they think is what we want. When no, we would like something different. We're bored with these. We don't need somebody yelling. It's like Kitchen Nightmares. What's his face? The guy.
He's British. He's British. He's got blonde hair. He's British with blonde hair. Somebody help me! Help me!
I can't think of
Gordon
his
Ramsay.
name.
Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah, he used to do Kitchen Nightmares, and then it changed. I don't know the name of it here, but it's Hell's Kitchen or something. I don't know. But you know exactly the formula, and after a while, it's this was good for 4 shows, but you got to mix it up. But I think cable news is I think it's. I think we're sensing things are changing. I think I find I find Tucker to be the most interesting interviewer.
Yeah.
No notes. And he just stares at the person. Totally opposite of what I do. You've been on my show. I have 30 pages of notes.
You have so much freaking paper there. How many trees do you kill? You're literally, terrible. It looks like a beautiful mind on your desk. You're scribbling everywhere. You're drawing sharks.
Kimberly Guilfoyle calls me that because I have like all this stuff. It's only because I don't want to miss anything, and of course I do because I have an idea all these ideas, so I write them all down, and then I end up having like 20 ideas, and then I never get to them because you guys have to talk. So I just I don't even know why that's there. Tucker just sits there and he just stares. And I always say he's like a dog watching a dryer. You know, it's just stares, and he's got this look, and it's the most intense interview because like you could tell he's in the moment. Like I'm not in the moment. I'm always ahead. I'm always somewhere else trying to figure out what am I going to ask Tyrus? What am I going to do here? Blah, blah, blah. But he's just like so focused on the guest. It's unbelievable. And he's like actually listening to every single word. I find that like, that's not me. I try to listen.
Wait a minute. You're telling me you're not listening to the brilliance that I bring to the Greg Gutfeld show?
I listen. Actually, I listen to good guests who aren't good. I'm too busy trying to figure out how to get to the end of the break. It's like, boy, this person isn't working out. I'm sure you've had that when a person isn't working out and you're like, oh God, how do I get from here to there?
Well, every now and again, I'll have a guest that I'll just be like, you're just not saying anything. You know, like sometimes people are just talking, but they're not really getting anywhere. And I try to lead them into something and they still can't get there. Fortunately, it doesn't happen that often because I think we select pretty well, but of course you're going to get that. But you know, your point on Tucker is interesting because you know I was on there last week and I've been on a couple of times, and generally because of the free speech stuff, I'm not the type of guest he's bringing on to hammer. But I always think it's amazing when he brings on these people that should know what he's about to do. And it's like they just walk in there as if it's going to be like kumbaya, and next thing they know, it's like you're dragging out a corpse. Yeah,
my favorite one was the guy who thought he could out-Tucker Kurt Eichenwald. Do you remember that one? He brought a stack of paper, and he said, and he was like, he brought a prop, and it was one of the most embarrassing things because all Tucker did was laugh at him. It was just so. It was painful. They should do a compilation, like if he goes off one night, they should do Tucker's like most amazing interviews and just have like all of these like crazies where the people come in and think, I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to be the guy that A, beats him, or B, he likes, or whatever. And it's just like you don't know where he's going to go, and then they just look really bad.
So speaking of Tucker, as I said before, one of the reasons I like doing this stuff, the Greg Gutfeld show it's live to tape, but it's not aired live. When you do the 5, it is aired live. Tucker's live, and I always my gut feeling, you got that?
There's a show.
Has anyone ever said that to you before? The gut feeling.
Yes.
My gut feeling is I like live straight up because I know I'm not going to be messed with. Now I know your guys aren't going to mess with me or edit me or anything like that. But when you're doing the live thing, when you're on the 5, you've already said that you know you're not going to get everything right all the time and you're happy to be corrected. But have you ever, just by the nature of the way the human mind works, started saying something and by the time the sentence finished, realized that you just completely had no idea what you were saying or something like that? You see this a lot, that all these people that have to talk all the time, every now and again you start saying something, and as it's coming out of your mouth, you go, oh man, I just stepped in it.
Yeah. It's just best at that point to trail off. And just take the embarrassment rather than I'm going in a really bad direction. You know what's funny though? I've noticed that whatever you think is really bad is less bad than you think. Sometimes it's like, oh geez, and then nobody noticed that, but there'll be something else that you don't think is a big deal. And that's the one that gets picked up and people say, I can't believe you said that. And I go, that's not what I meant. And that gets twisted and turned. You make an ironic joke that people will think you were serious. Like you were making fun of a person who might say that. You're mocking a sexist by saying something sexist, and then someone will say, no, you're sexist. I go, no, I was actually pretending to be sexist. Oh, forget it.
It's like, come on, man.
I can't do this. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get out of this. So I just stop, I'm trying to think, that just happened. That just happened to me. I can't remember what. I was complimenting somebody about saying she is a really tough person. She'd be a great prison guard. And someone said, how can you say that? And I go, it's a compliment. It's like, but I could see this. Oh, that's terrible. You would say that. I go, no, that's a compliment. Anyway.
In an odd way, that shows their sexism because shouldn't women be allowed to be prison guards or anything they want to be?
That's what I should have said.
By the way,
Damn
it's pretty funny. When we couldn't remember Gordon Ramsay a minute ago, you said before, what do you call that room of people with the facts? What do you say that was?
The brain room.
The brain room. I've just got a window here where a guy yells at me. So
it's like
it's a little different. All right. So just to kind of wrap, we could do this all day, and it's always a pleasure talking to you and all that stuff, and we will do this in person for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to end on because we've only said the T word, the Trump word. I think it was only lasted for about 20 seconds, and I do want to talk about it for a second. Because I don't think you were, at least at first, a huge supporter. I think you've basically, when I've done stuff with you, I sense that you're really trying to make some sense of what's going on here. I think you kind of get the way he's playing the media, which I've tried to address. To me, they're all liars. He's just lying in a different way. But he is lying, too. What at this point is your end answer with him? Or at least, where are you feeling right now?
I think he is doing a pretty decent job when he lets things do their job. I think like the hurricanes and stuff, the preparation stuff, but then he kind of steps in it. And then that creates a lot of mistakes and a lot of conflict. But I have to say that he's doing okay. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt when he became president. When there were other options, I was going like I pretty much was thinking Rubio. I liked and I also like Jim Webb. Was that his name, James Webb?
Jim Webb. Yeah. That poor guy. He was running for a party that left like 40 years before. You know.
Exactly. He was just an interesting guy. But anyway, I had to I was going like my problem with Trump is that he was taking ideas that I and other people have talked about it and kind of like treating them roughly. So that like it doesn't sound as good, except that he's making it persuasive to a certain group of people, but he's making it, he's twisting it in a way that is not as elegant, I guess, and that would drive me crazy. It's like that's not how you should do it. And then I realized that a lot of times I'm not getting it. That he's taking it to a different audience. It's like when he was making jokes that people were upset about like McCain. And I thought that was a poor joke to make. Then I realized if it was a roast, it was a great joke. Like if he had said that, it would have, and that's how he thinks. He feels that he's a performer out there and he doesn't really mean it. He doesn't mean that he's not a hero. It's just an insult that would have worked on a Comedy Central roast for Senator McCain. If he had said, he's not, everybody says he's a hero, but you're not a hero if you don't get caught, people would have laughed. When I took it out of the context of politics and put it in that context, I saw what he was. And I realized what a different kind of candidate he was and how different that was to me. And then I had this realization that why a lot of people on cable didn't like him was that he was the first cable news, actually the first Fox News president. He incorporated a lot of stuff that he had been ingesting for a decade, and he made it. He put it through his filter, and then became this phenomenon. And I think, I had one talk show host say to me, I could have done that. Like he's talking about himself. I could have done I could have done that. And he goes, well, you didn't. He did. And I think that's why I think I don't know. I don't talk to Glenn Beck, but I kind of think Glenn Beck was looking at this and going like, I could have done that. Why didn't I do that? I had the following. I could have done that, but I didn't. He did it. And it kind of bugs me. And it's like, I think we're seeing a guy that took ideas that were, I think, even from shows that he watched on Fox. And then he went out there and he performed, and he did a phenomenal job. I mean, it was so phenomenal that it surprised everybody.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just quickly, that's the interesting thing is I'll see people say, well, I'm actually okay with what he's done or hasn't done, or I'm okay with some deregulation, or the Title IX thing actually was bad, or whatever else. But then they'll say, I wish he could just stop tweeting. And I'll go, I don't really like the tweets. I don't comment on them because I'm not trying to add to the madness. But how can you tell the guy who did it his way and won despite all odds, well, now just do it the way everyone wants you to? It just doesn't stand to reason, regardless what you think of Trump.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I was thinking about this the other day. I was critical of his behavior, although his behavior was very similar to my own. And I'm wondering, I've said cruel things. I've said tacky things at speeches. I've made inappropriate jokes. And I wondered if I ran for president, would I change my behavior? I probably wouldn't. So how can I blame him for not changing his? I mean, how can I blame him for not being himself? So
Yeah,
it's
man,
like,
did you just announce for 2020? Is that what just happened there?
yes, exactly. No, there's no way I will ever run for office. I wanted to run for mayor. I keep thinking about that of New York because I can't stand de Blasio, but I don't, I just don't have you know what? I'm low energy Greg.
Yeah.
I'm low energy Greg. I just don't have the energy. It's like, again, one of the great labels of 2016, low energy ab. But no, it's not me. Maybe you.
Listen,
You could do it.
No,
With
no,
that
no,
beard?
no, no, no,
No,
no,
he got
no,
the
no.
look.
I mean, if I go full Abe Lincoln, I guess maybe I could,
Yes,
but probably
yes.
not. Well, listen, for a low energy guy, you're doing a great job over there. I think you're one of the people that I try to point to people of, like, the guy's trying to figure it out. And I know personally, I won't even mention some of the names that we've both come across of people we admire that are all over the political map that I know you get your information from, and I think that's a good thing. So you guys can check out the Greg Gutfeld show on Saturday nights, 10 p.m., right? 10 p.m.?
Exactly.
10 p.m. Eastern on Fox News, and he's on the 5, which apparently is moving to 5 o'clock. We cracked a story here today.
At some point. In the next
At some point,
weeks. Yes.
we shall find out. And
9 o'clock,
and
it'll be 9 o'clock this week.
9 o'clock this week,
Yes.
potentially 5 o'clock in the future. And
Yes.
all right, and next time we're doing this in person, my friend.
You got it. I'll see you soon, I hope. And
All
you
right,
got to come
thanks,
into
brother.
the show. Thank you,
And
man.
follow him on Twitter. It's at Greg Gutfeld. There you go.